There is a terrible and disturbing truth about our culture, one that is conspicuous but nearly taboo to discuss, that I believe must be comprehended in detail for us to discover a pathway towards right relationships. And I had to discover this truth in a relatively uncomfortable manner, working with the juvenile justice system in Idaho State in the early 90s. For those of you who might not know, Idaho State is a very backwards, conservative, and religious community, rife with childhood sexual abuse. There had been a number of large-scale scandals, Boy Scouts of America being just one of those that had come through while I was there. But I ended up with the unfortunate situation of meeting a lot of children who had been horribly abused, really, as well as the parents that had done the abusing. And here is the horrible truth. And I was stunned to discover this, that parents who had raped their own children, who had locked their children in closets for weeks or chained them to, in one case, a board nailed in the corner of the room, who had beaten their children within an inch of their life for sometimes even imaginary reasons. Parents who had engaged in behavior that to any outside observer was violent and destructive to the absolute extreme. Okay? These parents, almost universally, in fact, I cannot think of an exception, when confronted with their behavior, would say with complete confidence that their actions were motivated by love. And of course, one is astonished to discover that. It's incomprehensible, really. You ask, how could you possibly believe that this behavior is motivated by love? And the response would be, well, you simply don't understand. There were things that needed to be done, and I know that in my heart of hearts, my heart is in the right place. And they were confident and entitled in the position that their own self-referential definition of love, regardless of the consequences that might be felt by the object or recipient of that love, the self-referential definition of love was the only definition that mattered, right? And this is why, when you are dealing with pedophiles who are repeat offenders, they are so difficult to reach, because in fact they do believe that their behavior is love motivated, that their love is misunderstood, and it is simply their right to love in whatever manner they see fit. Because if you define it as love, as a feeling, as something that is somehow some divine representation within of some cosmic good, without any context nor view towards other, ultimately narcissistic to the point of being infantile, well, we could ask ourselves, what atrocity in the world has ever occurred that wasn't motivated by love? And this wasn't made better by the fact that many of these people had been indoctrinated in a tradition that derives its understanding of love from the Judeo-Christian tradition, where you have a relatively angry, judgmental, frightening creator deity that has tossed its children into a difficult world, burdening them with responsibilities impossible for a mortal being to bear up under, and then threatening them with death and eternal punishment if these children do not respond with complete worshipful, unconditional love. Like, if that is your definition and your model for ultimate love, basically to love at the threat of violence, well, it doesn't surprise me a great deal that we have this posture in some people. I suggest we need to look at things differently. But allow me to suggest, in a very, very dark manner, that the love and the mechanism of love that we see in pedophiles or religious ideologues, many of us still have a bias towards. That it's just that our preferences are different. We may not be attracted to the same things that the pedophile is attracted to, but we still largely believe that love is something that is self-referential. It is very it is very objective. It is a feeling. And the actual facts of the matter, of the consequences and the results of our loving, are secondary to the feeling. It seems to me that it should be conspicuous that if you were to look from the outside at a, say, parent-child relationship or a male-female relationship, and you were to ask as an independent third party, does this parent love this child? Or does this husband love this wife? Or does this wife love this husband? It's very easy for us on the outside to look at what occurs and answer easily yes or no. Remarkably, you cannot find that kind of clarity on an individual basis. Most people believe when they say they love something, that their view on that is sacrosanct and the authenticity of that love is unquestionable. Well, I'm here to question that, because if we continue to love in this infantile, narcissistic, and destructive manner, there will soon be nothing left to love. And I certainly understand that over especially the last decade or so, there's been an explosion of interest into why we, especially in the developed world, struggle so much with relationships. Interpersonal relationships or relationships with family. Well, here it is. It is that we don't know how to love. And there's a reason for that. We live within a society and a culture, and our very lives are based on, predicated on, supported by a exploitive, destructive relationship to the world we live in. There is no way for us to maintain the quality of life and the lifestyle and the comfort that we currently enjoy without destroying the world we live in. We have a relationship with the natural world, our home, our habitat, that is identical to that which you see exhibited between the pedophile and the child. It is one way we may say that we love the natural world, but yes, we do. like one might say they love pizza, as something that is an object to be utilized, exploited, and consumed, our love is infantile and only self-referential, and it bears no responsibility whatsoever into contemplating the consequences of what our supposed love might actually mean to its recipient. And this becomes especially sinister when one understands that one's ability to love is a global skill set, meaning that one will love family, intimate partners, oneself, the world, in identically the same manner, because it is a skill, it is a posture. One can't pick and choose to compartmentalize one kind of love in one part of one's life and another kind of love in another part of life. Either one loves with a due responsibility and contemplation for the welfare of other, as I, thou, or one loves objectively, narcissistically, and in an infantile manner that doesn't take other into account whatsoever. No, it is desperate that we choose to, and it is a choice, to love in a manner that is consistent with a life-affirming principle, which is creative love, which is love that puts its object ahead of its agent. I would say that while this need is conspicuous, anyone who would attempt to adopt this posture will have a very, very, very bleak moment of revelation. For to choose against the way that our society postures itself towards love and to embrace a life-affirming form of love will force a confrontation, well, with a lot of dynamics that are ugly to observe. But that shouldn't be discouragement necessarily. If anything, it should make authentic, creative, life-affirming love more precious. There is purpose to be found there, in spite of the fact that many of us may discover through this observation that we perhaps have never been authentically loved at all. But again, and to hammer the point home, the purpose of human life is to live a life of purpose, and purpose is found through connection, authentic connection. And authentic connection needs to have love as a prerequisite, or it can't exist. So we may as well contemplate on how to go about that. Cheers, peeps.